Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and tonight is part 2 of our interview with legendary Derby players, the great number 40, Jimmy Lewis, and the great number 76, Jeff Gabianelli. And gentlemen, we had a lot of fun in part 1. We're just scratching the surface. It's an honor to have you both back, and I want to thank you both for coming on again.
Thank you for having us, Mike.
Okay, so let's get right into it, the 1985 season. So many things happened that year. Number 1, Derby's first state title on the field. They had won a few, got recognized by the register and stuff, but this was actually the first one on the field. And then, of course, who could forget, finally, getting over that hump against Ansonia at Jarvis Stadium. Talk about going into that 85 season. What expectations did you guys have? What did the team have? Was the goal to win the Whoosy? What was the goal that year?
I think the goal is always to win the Whoosy, first and foremost. But I think we knew we had a good team coming in. Our offensive line was, it was big. We had a big offensive line. We had defensive players that were absolute phenomenal. I think Chris King may have played as a sophomore.
Right, in the secondary, right. So now let me ask you both. You both ended up starting that year. You both had good years, but we talked about this in part 1. When did you think by the red and white game that you two were comfortable that you were going to get to be on the field for that team?
Yeah, I think by the red and white game, positions are pretty much sorted out, and you kind of have an idea of who's going to play where. Like I said, I was just happy to be starting, whether it be offense, defense, anywhere on that team. Like I said, they had a lot of talent, that team, so to get a spot and earn a spot, it was tough. Tough. We had a lot of good players that couldn't get on the field because, like Jimmy said, that an entire offensive line was seniors, and we had people. They had so much talent that they didn't even have players play both ways. They had people just on defense, guys like Mike Jaddick and John Bogart and Ronnie Sheehy.
Right.
Excellent defensive players. So it was hard to find a spot.
Right. Jim, knowing that Channel was, the big back, he was a tremendous player for Derby. Did you think that it would be tough for you to see playing time, not knowing what kind of offense they may want to run, or did you have a good idea you'd be his counterpart?
By the red and white game, or?
Yeah, just pretty much going into the summer.
Yeah, going into the summer, I think we knew
and
what was going on.
I think Coach is always good about telling you, like taking you aside and saying, listen, you're going to be in the backfield or you're going to be at guard, whatever it might be. So I'm sure Coach probably told you where you stood, right?
And it was an honor being in the backfield with Mark Orchano, especially looking up to his brother Bobby. So I was like, I get to play with an Orchano. So it was pretty nice.
Right. One of the things they did that season is they extended the season to 11 games. And I think you guys played Notre Dame of Fairfield, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And it's a big school, and back then Derby had big kids, but they still had small kids as well, and you're playing all these big schools. Talk about that first game of the year against Notre Dame of Fairfield. I mean, you guys, tremendous victory, but early on it was a little nail-biter. I mean, you guys, I think, pulled away in the second half and buried them, but early on it was pretty nerve-wracking.
I never minded playing the bigger schools. I mean, a lot of our scrimmages, Charlie had lined up all L and double L schools.
I think you played Hamden a lot in the scrimmages.
Staples.
Hands, right.
Yeah.
All those schools, were Class L schools, which, turned out to benefit us in the long run. But as far as 11 games, I would have played 15 games.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the games were a lot easier than practice.
Right.
So I think that was what we were looking for. Coach worked us hard. He made sure we were prepared, and we would look forward to game time.
Right.
It's funny too, like Notre Dame. That these guys come out and they're huge, But I think with the tradition and the toughness of the Derby kids, coming from Pop Warner and then playing out, on the field watching game. They were big, but they weren't as tough as those guys.
No,
right.
And I just have to add to that. When I said about the practices, he's so right. Our practices were harder. We would go against each other hard,
right.
Where we would come across a team that was bigger than us, but they weren't as tough, and we had tougher days in practice than sometimes we would play in these larger schools.
Right. And Jeff, I want to thank you because you segued into what I was going to bring up. I talked to Coach D. Francisco this morning, and I told him I was having you both on. And D said, that a big reason the defense was so good those 2 years is because, Jim, you were known for going against the scout team, you'd play running back, and he said you would always try to, out-duel the defense. You'd always try to show them up, and Charlie would be yelling at him, wrap him. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, you get a lot of credit for how good that defense was, because he said you used to work them in practice. Talk about how important it is in practice to give the first team a good look.
It's very important, especially, they were going against some good running backs, so I wanted to emulate those guys.
Right.
And yeah, it's funny because I juke them and they get mad at me, and Coach Al will be yelling at them.
Right.
And then there's Charlie saying, "Run it again," and I was like, "Uh-oh,"
right?
Because I knew it was coming.
And as time went on, the numbers decreased for Derby, so you couldn't really have your best players going against the other players in scout teams because you had to keep them healthy. But back then, I mean, that definitely benefited Derby, because if you're going to beat the best, you have to practice against the best. And I think that was just as important, was to have you out there doing that.
Yeah, I agree. You practice how you play.
Right.
So
now, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were starting defense that year.
Correct.
And did you play some offense a little bit too?
Once in a while, I would spell guys like Danny Shea or.
Right.
Coach had me learn the offensive guard plays, the offensive tackle plays. Should anyone, George Scarpalato, get injured or
right.
Tom Fossey, I was next up, I guess, so to speak. So
right. Talk about the leadership of those guys: Danny Shea, Mike Jaddick, Tommy Abel, Fossey. All those guys. They were tremendous leaders, and they really wanted to win, and they weren't going to be the type of guys to try to treat you guys like jerks or anything, because they cared about winning, and that was the only thing.
we were pretty good friends with those guys. We
right.
hung out with those guys a lot, But Tommy Abel definitely was somebody I looked up to too. I mean, he was just a great player, and Tom Fossey. I mean, those guys were bigger than everybody else.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out to me in that '85 team is they wanted to win. They just wanted to win, and they worked hard, and that was contagious. We saw them working hard, made you work hard. We saw them wanting
right.
to win. It made us want to win. I think they set a good precedent, that class.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Jeff, there's one game that stands out to me, and I think it was I want to say it was against Brantford. I could be wrong, but you had a tremendous game on defense. I think you had 16 tackles that game. Talk about what that was like, because people were talking about Jeff Gabianelli the next day. That was in the paper and stuff. You want to win, and you try not to pay attention to that stuff, but you're a 16-year-old kid. It had to be a great feeling, knowing that you played a big part in a victory.
It is, yeah, but I never really paid attention to newspaper things or anything
right.
like that. But the atmosphere that '85 class created, and knowing that we were juniors and we were on the same field, and they believed in you to play your position. I didn't want to let Danny Shea down. So I know how to go out there and how to play my best. I didn't want to let John Bogart down. I didn't want to let Tom Abel down.
Right.
I didn't want to let those guys down. So I think that was how I kind of looked at it.
And I think even going into that game, because we beat them as JVs, we were like, these guys could be beat. So that even gave us more inspiration. And in the locker room, I believe that day, we were just, it was different. There was something in the air.
Right.
It was like we knew we were going to win this game.
Yeah.
Right. Jim, it's not easy to get a lot of carries when you're sharing the ball with a great player, but Coach DeCenzo made sure that you and Orchano got equal reps. Just talk about how did you think your season was going early on? Did you think you were carrying the ball enough? Were you not carrying it enough? How would you assess it?
And I remember the Lyman Hall game,
right.
especially in
which we're going to bring up.
Field.
Right.
The field was horrible, and I think he kept giving me the ball. And I was, give it to Mark, because these guys were huge. They were big, and
right.
They were just pushing us. They were really pushing us all over the field.
That year.
Yeah.
They were state champions that year.
Right.
Yeah.
And but guys, one thing about that game, and I remember being at that game and Derby lost, but in a lot of ways, sometimes a loss feels like a win, because everybody I talk to says if you guys beat Lyman Hall, you're not beating Ansonia. It kind of made you guys realize that you had to work harder to get to the goal you wanted. Talk about that loss. You guys were down early and you came back. I think you were down 20-0 and ended up getting beat 20-13 or 20-12. But talk about what was your feeling that day? Like, did it make you angry and say, you know what, I don't want this to happen again?
Yeah, no, that game was a reality check.
Sure was.
For the whole team. During practice, during the scrimmages, some of the couple games we had before the Lyman Hall game, we knew we had a good team. We knew we had some good players and some good positions. But that loss definitely was a reality check, and more so, I think the coaches realized that, hey, you know, this team could be beat, and I think we kind of learned that lesson the next week in practice, right?
Oh, Charlie!
I would need to step it up a little bit.
Right.
Charlie ran us, right?
Yeah.
Just ran at the end of practice. Just ran us and ran us. And he did that for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
It was brutal.
Right. But would you say, though, would you agree with that statement that that loss actually benefited you?
Absolutely.
I would. I think from that point on, we worked a lot harder. Not that we weren't working hard before, but we realized that, hey, anything can happen and any team can get beat on any given day. So we got to give our best every game, every minute, every play.
Right. Now, one of the things that happened that year, and Jeff, you talked about you loved playing under it, but it was the first year Derby played under the lights. And I think, was it Lyman Hall's lights you got? I'm pretty sure. I think you got them from. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Jim, I'll start with you because you're a back that's going to, go out for passes, receive a little bit. Was it difficult that first game under the lights, or was it exciting?
It definitely was. It was different, because we're used to playing at 10:30 in the morning on Saturday.
Right.
And it was better, though. I like playing under the lights a lot better.
It kind of didn't make the week drag as much,
Yeah.
where, like, if you're not playing until Saturday, your week is dragging on,
Correct.
And then the other thing is you could go and watch the other teams play.
Right, because you guys were
Yeah.
one of the few that had
Yeah.
lights. I don't think Shelton or Ansonia or Seymour. Seymour, the running joke for years was they didn't want to play Derby on Friday nights because Derby never lost under the lights. So you guys were one of the few that had lights at that time.
Right.
So it was definitely, something new. But in a lot of ways, I think it was cool, because you play some Friday night games, you play some Saturday games. So let's get into a game that was the coming out for Jimmy Lewis, and that was against Sheehan. You talk about Lyman Hall, state champs. Sheehan was also state champs that year. Very good team. You guys beat them 31-0, no problem. Jim, talk about that game. You had 4 touchdowns in that game. I think you had like 180 yards. What was that feeling like for you?
It was a great game, but I mean, the offensive line that we had was just amazing.
Right.
I mean, the holes were incredible. Mark Searles the quarterback and Mark Orwich. I mean, it was really a team effort. So I don't,
Right.
that 180 yards is a team.
Right. But, I mean, did you have a good feeling that, you were going to get more and more carries as the season went on?
You always hope for more carries.
Right.
So, yeah.
Talk about your relationship with Orchano. I'm sure there had to be like a bond there with him because you two were both the main backs and you two made each other better.
There definitely was. I mean, that 99-yard touchdown that he ran against Seymour, I mean, just amazing. And we had a good relationship. So.
Right. And Jeff, I mean, as I said, you were getting some time on offense. You were starting defense. Talk about that defense, Jeff, because I think that team shut out about 5 or 6 opponents that year. For the longest time, they were not giving up any points. I mean, when Ansonia scored against you guys, that was like the first points in a couple weeks you guys had given up.
That defense was tremendous. I mean, we did have some size up front with Scarpolato and Kaprisky, and we also had some speed. We had speed at linebacker. We had Tom Fossey and Danny Shea, and our outside linebackers had Bogart and Bob Sobin. There was some good speed on that team.
And Tilkey. Yeah.
John Tilkey was in the mix there, and I think Ronnie Sheehy in the second year was probably the hardest hitter pound for pound that I've ever seen. That was a well-rounded defense. I think we had a little bit of everything.
Right.
Yeah, Ronnie Sheehy was the hardest hitter I think I've ever
we've
got
seen
hit
that
by.
in practice.
Great player, yes, definitely. So let's get into the game that, was one for the ages. I still get goosebumps just talking about it, the Ansonia game. And a lot of things were going on at that point. They were #1 in the state. You guys had come off that one loss. And I don't know if you guys could really think about going to the States back then it was still kind of a new thing. It was only like 9 years into the making. But if you guys lose that game, a lot of things happen. Pretty much your season, you're going to have maybe 9-2 at best. Who knows if you lose another game. So there were a lot of things at stake. It was almost like a must-win. But there was also the 11-game winning streak that Ansonia had. They had also beat Derby 9 straight years. Talk about that game. Talk about the week, what that was like. And let me ask you, I know you both were juniors, but you're both on the field. I mean, butterflies like crazy that whole week or what?
I think so. You know, it was funny, though. During that week of practice, one of the former Ansonia players came to our practice. You remember Steve Sobolewski was at our practice.
Oh, wow.
And they had to ask him to leave. So, yeah, I mean, it was intense. It's funny because, you know, Derby and Ansonia are so close.
Yeah.
But you see all these guys, you know.
Right.
So there's always, you know,
Yeah,
Raz and
Dutchess,
oh,
Ansonia
yeah.
Mall, you know, Bradley's, all those places, you're going to run into them.
They had Dutchess, we had McDonald's. Don't come
Right.
on our turf.
Right. But, you know, that's what makes it a great rivalry. But let's talk about the game. And that defense, the game they played, Johnny Bogart was unbelievable. And I think that was Bogart's first game as a starter on defense. He was playing some offense, but Alu inserted him. Maybe he inserted him in the Sheehan game. But Bogart that day was just phenomenal. Talk about the game he played that day.
John had an awesome game. If you watch that game, it seems like he's everywhere on the field.
Right.
In the right place at the right time.
Cool.
That wasn't a surprise, though,
No.
to me. I mean, if you saw it in practice that
Right.
week leading up to it. I was a defensive end, so I really didn't know much that was going on in the secondary. That was Coach Alu's thing.
Right.
But you knew that Alu was devising things,
Yeah.
scheming things.
One thing about Coach Alu, though, if the defensive end messed up his defensive backs, he came down hard on you.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
You're right about
right.
that.
You couldn't. But the leading up to that first touchdown, what a drive you guys had on offense, Jim. I mean, the line was blocking tremendous. You guys were moving the ball on them. They had great players. I mean, there's so many players on their team. You know, I think of guys like Eddie Jerome, and they had Andre Holman. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, these were men, and you know, Zielinski was a great player for them. Talk about like that first drive where you guys got that. Do you think that first touchdown gave you guys the confidence that we're not letting this team beat us?
I think so, and you know, watching that game, I think we dominated almost when we were running the ball. We ran pretty. Both of us ran hard. I think we both had a fumble, but we won't talk about it.
Right.
But yeah, you know, our offensive line was just amazing. I mean,
Right.
you got Tom Fossey and Scarps on one side, and if you ran on that side, the hole
Right.
was just, it was huge. So.
Right. You know, Mark Gretadoria, you know, he may not have stole the headlines a lot, but he makes a great catch that day. You know, it was a little overthrown. There's always talk, was he throwing it to sack you or whoever was over there?
Right.
But a big touchdown there, you know, you guys kicked the extra point. You guys seem to be dominating. There was one play, though, that Marco Orciano deserves a medal for, because on a screen pass, Ansonia almost picks that off. I think the kid grabs it at first, and Orch just takes it out of his hands. That kid ever gets that ball, he's going all the way, and you guys aren't winning that game. It was little things like that team did. And then, you know, Ansonia, the whole game was having trouble moving the ball, and you guys, their one touchdown, you know, the Derby defender fell down, and Ahern ran it all the way in for a touchdown. Let me ask you, did you think they were going to go for two there? They faked it, but did you think they were going to do that?
No.
No.
I was actually surprised that they did.
But you guys were ready for it. You guys definitely were. And I think that was a turning point, too, because you guys are ahead the whole game. They score. You're kind of like deflated a little bit, but you stop them on the 2-point conversion. You still have the lead, and I think that's what kind of kept it together.
7-6.
Right.
7-6.
And let's talk about that final series. Number one, Jeffrey Coppola gets hurt the second to last play. He's taken off, and it's 4th and 15. You're thinking, we're going to win this game because they got to put their sophomore in. James Lane comes in, and you just know after the play he makes, he's going to be great because they miss it by an inch, like, you know, 1 yard.
Yeah.
How nervous, Jim, you were on the sidelines watching that. How nervous were you when he caught it? Did you think he got the first down?
I was a wreck. I thought we lost.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty scary. And then you know, that was fourth down.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
fourth down.
So,
And then you talk about scariness. Somehow Derby gets a delay a game, and Cerros is on the 2-yard line, and you're worried they're going to push him back into the. What was the feeling like? You both were probably on the sidelines because the offense was on it. Well, you were on the field.
I was on the field, yeah.
What was the feeling like though when Cerros took that knee and?
Well, we pushed them. We had to push them forward.
Push them forward.
Because they were coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were coming.
But what was that like when you guys
Oh, it was
pandemonium? I mean, Derby had not beaten Ansonia, and I know you guys beat them in the JVs, and you beat them sometimes in Pop Warner, but it's not the same feeling.
No.
You know, when you have all those people there, there's probably like, what, 15,000 there that day. What was that feeling like running onto that field? I mean, did you feel like you couldn't even feel your feet?
It was amazing. I mean, the crowd, Derby, everybody was on the field.
The crowd just poured out the field.
Right.
It was an amazing feeling. It was just. We're just finally glad we were able to beat them. Because like I said, I don't really know exactly how many years had passed before we last beat them. You know, but
1975 was the last time Derby beat them, so you're talking 10 years later.
Right.
You know, and I think when streaks like that end, you have to beat them on their field to do it. And that's what you guys did. And that had to be even a better feeling, that you won on their field, you got to celebrate on their field. I mean, I'm sure you guys didn't sleep for a couple of days, correct?
No. We were still pumped up. At least
Yeah.
I was pumped up.
I was too.
After that game.
Yeah.
That was a good game. It was a good feeling.
They had great players, though.
Right.
They really did. I mean, Coppola and
No other team was able to stop their passing game. You know, Jeff Coppola, Terry McNamara.
Right.
I think that's why Allen put in so much extra effort in our secondary. And I had a feeling that our defense would probably do a pretty good job against them, and they may have a difficult time scoring. But luckily we were able to put some points on the board. I would have liked a couple more to feel a little more comfortable. But.
Right. And a lot of times what happens is you beat a team like that, it's hard to get up for the next game. But you had Seymour and you couldn't let up. You guys beat them 21-0. The defense again just played tremendous. I think Orch had a 100-yard run that game against Seymour. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you guys something. What do you think happened in the Shelton game? Do you just think that Charlie always says he should have did things differently that day? He tried to do too much. Do you believe that, or do you just believe Shelton was ready that day?
I think that putting Tommy Abel in the backfield might have been a mistake. You know, I don't know if it was too cute of an offense.
Right.
But I mean, our offense was doing fine. Let's do what we do best, run the ball. You know.
I do. I think we kind of got away a little bit from our game plan. It was working all year. We had, like I said, we had a good line. We had a good offensive line that year. Did they know what we were going to do? Yeah, they probably did. It was either going to be Jimmy or Mark. Okay, we'll try to stop it.
Right.
I just think we should have stuck with that game plan.
Right. You know, you guys lose in overtime 10-7. Again, the defense played great. Shelton had that one run, and that was the turning point. I always heard that Charlie was undecided about playing that state championship game. He talked to you guys, and you guys aren't going to say, no, of course you're going to play the game. A lot of things happened that week, and the tragedy of the River Restaurant was the biggest thing. That day in the locker room, I know one of the victims' family members came up and talked to you guys. How emotional was that day for both of you?
It was very emotional. I think, were you with me the day
We were
before?
together, yeah.
Because we were coming down.
And you had a teammate that worked at the River, so Chris
Yeah.
Luchow, so that definitely,
But we were coming on the road, and we heard the explosion, and we all jumped out of the car and ran up to it. And there was a cop in the middle of the street saying, "Get out of here! There's a gas leak." So we took off, but it was such a feeling that you couldn't do anything then, and we knew there was people in there.
right.
But yeah, them coming into the locker room was a big motivation for sure.
It was inspiring, and that just goes back to what we had talked about earlier about the type of town Derby is. It's very family oriented, and you're going to know someone involved in that tragedy, whether a relative, a friend of the family, whatever the case is. And if the people came wishing us well, knew we were going to play for a state championship, and you wanted to do well. You want to do well for the town, the community, and we definitely have that family-type atmosphere.
Right, and I think for 48 minutes, you guys gave that town an escape. This was a big, immaculate team. They were huge.
They were big.
And you guys had your way with them. You beat them 25-6. that's the toughness of Derby football right there, because the size didn't matter, as you both had mentioned before. It's hard to have a second moment, or it's hard to match any moment when you beat a team like Ansonia. You just win a state title, though. Could you appreciate it more back then, or was it hard back then because that Ansonia win kind of like overshadowed it?
Ansonia is a big rivalry, and winning that game was important. But I think a state championship is something that probably goes on the wall forever, and it's something you can't take away. So,
right.
Me personally, I really enjoyed the state championship.
Right, Jim.
I think the Ansonia game was more.
A lot of guys I talk to, anybody I ask, Jeff's the first that said state title game. Most of them say the Ansonia game because, back then, again, the state championship thing was new, and beating Ansonia was everybody's ultimate goal,
Yeah, they were number one in the state. I mean, they're Ansonia.
But, I mean, it had to be a great feeling to be state champion.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
One of the highest honors a Derby football player could have is being elected captain. And you both, along with Ronnie Benito and Walt DeForest, were named captains senior year. What kind of feeling was that, Jeff, for a guy who couldn't get on the field till freshman year? What did it mean for you to be a captain your senior year?
I actually take a lot of pride in the fact that I was captain, mainly because of the fact that the coaches don't pick captains. It's a vote amongst the team.
Right.
Knowing that your peers voted for you, trusting you to be a leader for them and lead by example, that meant a lot. I think it was important that I was captain. At least to me, it was a big honor. I was happy I was captain of that team.
Yeah, and I think we had a good crew of 4 captains. I think they, I wasn't very vocal. I tried to lead on the field, and then I think Benito was more of the rah-rah guy.
Yeah, it was a good mix. We had a good mix
Right.
of captains. Walter Forrest, he was just a hard worker.
Yeah.
He just never quit. And people could see that, underclassmen could see that, and he was a good captain as well.
But it was definitely an honor to be voted.
Right. One of the things that you guys had yet to accomplish was winning the Hoosie. And Coach DiFilippo seemed to win the Hoosie every year he coached. So you're talking about a 4-year gap, I believe, the last time Derby had won one, maybe a 3-year gap. So that had to be a goal that you guys set when the season started. Of course, you want to win a state title, but the goal had to be to beat Ansonia and, of course, win the Hoosie, correct?
Right. Goal was always to win the Hoosie first.
Correct.
Right. And you guys opened up again with Notre Dame of Fairfield. I believe you guys were away this time, or were you home?
Away.
Away.
Yeah.
So you opened your first 2 games away. Talk about, this time was a little tougher, I believe, against Notre Dame of Fairfield, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It was.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, it was closer.
And you guys had lost a lot of players. You had a lot that
players.
came back, but at the same time, you guys were a great team, but you guys weren't going to kill teams, so you really had to grind it out. Just talk about a little bit about what it was like that season, being able to grind victories out.
Well, think about this. That whole offensive line from the year before was gone.
Yes.
So everybody on the offensive line was new. We had Buff Bartone,
Right.
Benito.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I wanted to
Lou
mention
Chow, I think.
Lou
was at
Chow was a
center.
center.
Right.
Jay Benanto.
Jay Benanto, a tackle, right, yeah.
So I mean, for what we accomplished that year, and I think I was the only starter coming back on offense because we had Chris King,
Right.
Great quarterback.
Right. I think Pete saw
athlete.
some time as a receiver junior year, but he didn't always get in as much. But it was a new team for a lot of yourself and Jeff were both starters. I think Benito played a little, as did Walt. I think they saw time.
Yeah.
Bobby Sobin played.
Bobby Sobin.
Right.
But other than those people we just said, there wasn't a lot of varsity experience coming back.
Yeah.
Right.
So to accomplish what we did in the first 10 games was,
losing Ortano, it would seem like you were going to be the only feature back. However, Sobin stepped in that year, and it was like you guys never missed a beat. You still had 2 great running backs. I think even McGee got some time at running back, Ray McGee. But let's talk about that Seymour game, because that was a nail-biter. You guys, seemed like you had it in control. Then they made a big touchdown run, I believe, and they took the lead. And then, Jim, you come back after that with a big, long run, and you guys win, I believe, 21-19.
Right.
I think that was the turning point in the season. You know, it's always going to be beating Ansonia is the biggest win, but I really think for you guys, especially for the Hoosie, that game against Seymour was a big turning point for you guys.
Yeah, I think it was too. You know, once again, these guys did their job. They opened a great hole, and you know, it was easy to run through. So,
right.
You know, Bobby Sobin knocked people over. He was just a tough kid.
You know, he was a good running back, but he was a tremendous defensive player. He really was, you know. And I know that they used to always joke that Alu used to bust his chops in practice about how we lost. I think
two smartest.
Now we have the two Bogart. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, maybe in practice he didn't always please Alu, but I'll tell you in the game, Sobin always stepped it up.
Yeah.
Sobin was definitely more of a game time player.
Yeah,
right.
He was a great fullback. I don't think I could probably count on one hand how many blocks he missed. You know, he
I don't think he missed one.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, he did an awesome job. Without him, we probably wouldn't have been 10-0 at one point in the season.
With it, I mean, it really the team. You know, we had some great juniors that came on, and you know, those guys really. Jamie Gagnon. You know.
Yes, he was very good. Yeah.
Greg Patinella.
You know, another kid who doesn't get a lot of press, but he's one of the best punters I ever saw in Derby history was Jimmy Albert.
Jimmy Albert,
That guy could punt the ball, and I mean, he was a big reason why you guys won a lot of games because nobody ever had field position on you guys.
Yeah, Jimmy Albert was a good punter. It's funny when the punter comes on the field.
Right. Oh, I know. It's crazy. So now, let's talk about Ansonia again. You beat them at Jarvis. It's very rare at this moment for anybody to beat Ansonia back-to-back. They had Doug Morrell. They were going through some tough times that year, but they had a very good running back in Gordon Piper. They still had Andre Holman, who was tremendous, and James Lane was the quarterback, tremendous athlete. They had a talented team. I think they had Brent Harvey, who was very good. So they had a very good team, Todd Givens. Talk about that Ansonia game, because you guys go up 7-0 early. Sobin makes a great run. But then Ansonia, it seemed like that first half Ansonia was doing a great job running the football, and Gordon Piper was kind of having his way. You guys go into the half down 8-7, and it seemed like a light switch turned on because the second half they did not move the ball at all. What did Coach say in the locker room during that point? I mean, did he kind of keep it low key and say, "We got this," you know?
No. We got this. No, he's pretty animated. He said, "This is Ansonia. This is Ansonia." He said, you know, I think one of his famous lines was, you know, you go on the field, you leave everything you have on the field.
Yep.
You know, you come back, you don't look yourself in the mirror saying, "I could have done more." And that was his theme, I guess. And that's how we played. You know, we left everything on the field.
Yep.
Right. And Jim, let me ask you this. You carried the ball 40 times that game, matched your number, which is hard to believe. How exhausted were you that game carrying the ball so much? Probably during the moment you didn't care.
It wasn't too bad, actually. You know, once again, the line and Sobes and, I mean, everybody played a part.
Right. 226 yards, though. That's nothing to, you know, not too shabby. That was pretty amazing.
Not too bad. I still think Bobby Sobin should have got the player of the game.
You know, so many players, though, in that game played well. And again, like I said, the defense in the second half, Ansonia did not move the ball. Once you guys took that lead 15-8, it seemed like that's all you had to do. It was in control. I mean, what was the feeling like to beat them back-to-back? You don't want to lose your senior year. You don't want that on your resume. So what did that feel like? Was it relief or was it enjoyable?
No, it was enjoyable. It's always good to beat Ansonia.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the records are. Their record, our record, it doesn't matter. When you meet them, when we play, you want to win.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm glad we beat them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And Jim, you were player of the game, and you'd already been player of the game against Seymour. I don't care. I know, like, you're not about stats and stuff like that, but it has to be a great feeling to know that you got player of the game against the biggest rivalry in the state.
It was nice. It was nice, especially one of my best friends, John Bogart, was player of the game, I think, the year before.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, it was nice. Right.
And Jim, you know, this went on for probably close to 30 years. You were not recognized as a single-season 1,000-yard rusher, even though we finally researched and we found out a year ago that you rushed for almost 1,300 yards. What was the feeling like to be a 1,000-yard rusher in a season? That has to be a tremendous feeling because A, you got to give the line a lot of credit because it doesn't happen without them. But B, that's a big accomplishment for a small school like Derby for a kid your size to be able to do that.
It was a nice accomplishment, but it was a team effort. I couldn't have got those yards if these guys weren't blocking so well, if Sobin didn't knock everybody down that he, ran into, and Chris King has to hand me the ball. So
right.
It was nice, though.
Right. Jeff, you guys clinched the Hoosie the week before Shelton. You win the Hoosie. That was the goal. You won a state title. What was it like to win the Housatonic League? How good of a feeling was that?
That's our goal.
Right.
That's our goal every year. And to win that, we've accomplished our goal, and we're happy. But there's always more. You always want more.
Right.
So looking ahead to the state championship, knowing that we have a chance to get there, and the Shelton game is coming up, them being a rivalry as well. So we had our work cut out for us, but we were looking forward to what was coming.
Right. Now let's talk about the Shelton game. A lot of things went wrong that day. The field was a muddy mess. I mean, it really was. It stopped, Jim. You were not able to run like you wanted to. I mean, the conditions were terrible. Do you think I don't think you guys were overconfident. Do you think weather played a lot into that game that day?
I don't know. I came out of the locker room in the morning and looked at our field, and our field was fine.
Right.
So it must have rained a lot in Shelton because that field was the worst field I've ever played on. I mean, our offensive line, they were fast, but they were small. So, I mean, how do you stop a fast team?
Right.
So,
Jeff, do you think it played a part?
I do, just because our team wasn't built that way. Our team wasn't built to play in field conditions where you can't get traction, where Jimmy couldn't cut, where the guard couldn't pull. We were built more speed oriented.
Right.
We had guys in positions that would play guard or defensive end or that could have been a fullback on any other team in the state. They were athletic enough to do that, but they were forced to play the line. So we had more athleticism on our line, but we were smaller, so we relied a lot on our speed, a lot of trap blocking, a lot of pulling.
Right.
So it was hard to do in a field like that, and I think that played a huge
it was
part.
huge.
I mean, it didn't affect the Hoosie or anything, but
No.
it took away your undefeated
Yes.
season, and it's Thanksgiving. So it's a tough pill to swallow. You guys qualify again for the state title game. It looked like in the first half you guys were going to have your way. Jim, you made a big run in the first quarter, set the tone right off the bat. Do you think that touchdown before the half really broke your backs?
Yeah, that definitely gave them a little momentum going into the locker room.
Right. And they were a well-coached team. I mean, very talented team.
I think we might have been a little overconfident too.
Right.
We had beat them the year before.
They had a good team. They had a lot of players come back
Right.
from the previous year immaculate. They had guys like, I think Kohut.
Joey Kohut,
He was an
right.
all-state player. They had a guard linebacker.
They had a linebacker, yeah.
He had size, and they were a good team. They had a lot coming back.
Right.
So, and us, on the other hand, we had a lot of holes to fill. So
Right.
it was a good matchup.
You go 10-2, and you lose to Shelton, and you lose to Immaculate in the state title game. You kind of feel like it put a damper on your season. But when you win the Housatonic League and you win 10 games and you beat Ansonia, it's still a great season. Maybe at the time you guys didn't understand that, but do you look back and say it was a great year no matter what?
We kind of look back and say we should have won that state championship game. The Shelton game, there was no way. I mean, they were just so big, and that field was.
Right.
But the state championship game, definitely.
Game. Yeah, I wish we did win that game, but like I said, I'm proud of what our '86 team did.
Right.
We lost a lot of talent. We had a
lot of talent.
A lot of juniors step up to do what we did. I mean, if you think about it, we lost a starting quarterback, we lost a starting running back, our
Right.
entire offensive line, our number one receiver, many players on defense. So to do and accomplish what we did, I think you never want to underachieve, and I
Right.
don't think that's what our class did. I think if anything, we overachieved.
Right, and think about it, in the 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior year, you won 8 or more games. Teams don't do that anymore either, so that was pretty impressive. You guys received 2 great honors. Jim, you win the prestigious Derby Albarella Award, and that is prestigious because you're talking about so many great Derby players. And Jeff, you make register All-State first team. I think you and Mark Angeletti are the last guys to do that. It hasn't happened since 1988. Talk to me, Jeff, about what it was like when Coach called you and said, listen, you made All-State. Seeing that you couldn't play Pop Warner and you're in your 4th year of playing organized football and you're All-State, what was that like?
Obviously, that was never my goal. My goal was just to play hard and do my best on every play. And when Coach called me and told me that, my first thing was maybe he's joking, but Coach didn't really joke all that often. So,
right.
So I was floored. I was like, I didn't expect it. We always have a saying like the whoozy, take care of your job, win the whoozy, the rest is gravy.
Right.
And that's my mentality.
And both of you made all whoozy, all valley.
Yes.
I mean, you both, and Jim, I think you made all area, if I'm not mistaken, as
Did,
well.
yeah.
Coaches or Class S, all state, which you both made. Those are quite the accomplishments. Jim, when your name gets announced for the Albarella Trophy, I mean, again, it's the team thing, and I know you probably thanked the team for that. Did you get that feeling in your heart, though, where it was coming out of your chest when they announced your name?
I did. And I was trying not to be nervous, and as I was walking up there, Coach DeCenzo grabbed my arm and said, "Don't be nervous." I'm like,
Right.
he just made me more nervous.
Right.
But yeah, it was great. I mean, there's so many.
Did you find yourself staring at it all night when you brought it home? I mean, you have to a little bit. I mean, it's Derby football. That was for everybody, when you lived in that town.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice. It was nice.
Right.
But it was a team.
It's probably the equivalent of the Heisman.
Yeah, probably so.
Right. Talk about just the friendships you both made, not only with each other, but with all those guys through grade school and stuff like that, and to be able to win championships with them, the bond you have, what does that mean to both of you?
It's important, and again, it goes back to just growing up in a small community, a small town, playing whatever sport it may be, organized sport, or just we would play numerous pickup games, whether it be football, street football, pickup basketball game, since we were kids.
Yeah.
And I still see a lot of those same guys today. And
Right.
And Jimmy lives in Louisiana, and I could probably not see him for a year and a half, 2 years, but when I do, we just pick up right where we left off.
And when I usually come home, I'll call the guys, and they all come. They all come, and we just hang out, and it's almost like we're back in high school, because our wives are like, oh, they're telling these stories again.
Right.
But it's the friendships. I mean, they're my best friends in the world. I mean.
Right.
So.
And let me ask you, how much did those coaches mean to you? I mean, to this day, you still speak fondly of them. They definitely played an impact in your lives, not just your playing careers, correct?
Correct, yes. Charlie gets a lot of, we talk about him a lot, he's the head coach, but DeFrancisco, Coach Alu, Tommy D'Onofrio, my freshman year, they have taught me lessons, and whether it be a saying or a phrase that they would say over, it's stuff you carry with you, and you do remember. And number one goal with them was always have a good work ethic.
Yeah, hard work. Yeah.
Right. Now let me ask you both, that first year out of high school, was it tough going to games and not being able to be on that field? Did you go through that withdrawal of like, oh, I want to be out there? I mean, it's tough to walk away from it when you've done it for so long.
I was playing at the University of New Haven,
Right.
so I didn't really get to go to many games, but
Right.
yeah, coming back, it's definitely tough. And I used to have dreams about still playing with you guys. It was,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely difficult.
I came back quite a few years because you still know a lot of the players.
Yeah.
Right.
And you want to see them do well, and whether they were freshmen, sophomores coming up, with you, but as time goes by, you start to lose track of the players, and you forget names, and you don't really go as much, and you kind of get busy in your own life. But
Right.
there's times when I do come to a Derby game.
Right.
But coming back that year, when I was playing in my freshman year, came back for the Shelton game, and it was amazing win that those guys had.
33-8 game, yeah. Greg had a great game.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That was a great team too, a very underrated team.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of players again, and they were able to come back with 9 wins. Let me ask you both, you're in Louisiana, you're in West Haven, as a police officer. Do you still kind of keep an eye on Derby and see how they're doing, the football team and this and that? I mean, do you still try to make it to a Derby Ansonia game if you're able to?
I do. I always, look in the paper or I go online and I read and see how the Derby did, and I always keep track of who's coaching and what's, I know that a few coaching changes along the way, and I try to keep involved as far as who's doing what.
Right.
And I do from my sister and my nephew's playing for Derby, so
right.
Well, Damien, hope he does well.
Right. Jim, let me ask you, you love Louisiana, the weather's great, this and that, but do you still miss being here? I mean, do you still it's got to be tough to be miles away from a town you grew up with and friends you grew up with. Do you kind of miss it a lot?
Yeah, I miss my friends, family, and the pizza, because the pizza down there is horrible.
Right. Jeff? Well, you're still around.
I'm still around.
So you kind of get to see it. So let me ask you guys this, and I'll start with you, Jeff. You sit in this locker room right now. What do you think of when you're sitting in here? What goes through your head right now, looking at these lockers and things of that nature?
There's definitely a lot of nostalgia. A lot of the lockers, the shower room, the equipment that's laying around. This is not too far off from when it was when we played. There's a lot of memories, a lot of tradition here. A lot of great players came through here. A lot of great athletes had these lockers.
Right.
And I would like to think that the younger kids coming up kind of realize, the players that have gone through this locker room and the tradition and what's involved.
I think you guys really do a good job with the Derby Hall of Fame now, because I don't know that the old players know, the new players know about the tradition back then.
Right.
I think George tries to, instill that, but we've had people not knowing that Derby was really good back then. So.
Right. Guys, I really enjoyed this. I mean, you two are legends, as I said. I know you two won't ever say that about yourselves, but there's plenty of people that do. The time you guys played football at Derby, it was a great time to be involved in Derby. You walked out with a Hoosie championship, you walked out with a state championship, you walked out with 2 wins against Ansonia, and what's better than that? I don't think you could top that. And it was an honor to interview both of you, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate it.
So there you have it, folks. Jimmy Lewis and Jeff Gabianelli, players on Derby from 1983 to 1986. Jimmy Lewis, if you ever watched him play, the guy could run like the wind. Tremendous player, tremendous running back, always gave 150%. And then you had a guy like Jeff Gabianelli, who was not able to get on the field until his freshman year. He never let that deter him. He knew one day he'd get out there and he'd make the most of it. In 4 years at Derby, he did just that, making him register All-State. These two guys had a tremendous impact on Derby sports and Derby football. They left it all on the field, and there are no regrets. They are two guys that you definitely could look up to and be proud of. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying, good night, everyone.